Let's welcome him on stage. What's up, y'all? Okay, before I get started, I know you all just took a group photo, but I want everybody to take out their phone. Take out your phone. And I want you to look into your phone and take a beautiful Ziggy, take a selfie, all right, of yourself, all right? And we'll come back to it, all right? So smile, take that photo. All right, after you've done it of yourself, put your phone on the ground or in your pocket, and don't touch it till I tell you. Okay? I'm pretty crazy. Or rather, I'd say, I like to live life on the edge. Quite literally. Here's a picture of me where I slept the night before on the Grand Canyon, right on the edge there. A couple hours later, took a handstand on the edge. My mom was not too happy about that one. Sometimes I like to push it a little further and take a dive off the edge. Like the little dot in the top corner, falling. Now if you want a closer look, this is at the same thing, in Zimbabwe, diving off the edge, and they said, hey, you can do a handstand if you want. So as some of my short swim scholars can attest, I like doing handstands in some random places, and decided to take a nosedive off here as well. I told my mom about that one after I did it. I like to do a lot of crazy things. Here's me jumping out of my first airplane, and on this side is standing on top of a castle in Italy. Here's me when I was crazy enough to start studying Chinese. This is at Fudan University. On my first day of class, I was told to get a Tinxie, which I had no idea what that meant. And my teacher proceeded to read an entire paragraph, at which I just looked at her like, expecting something afterwards, and I learned that I was supposed to write down what she said. Anybody want to guess what I got on that quiz? A 0. Yes, a 0. Here's me after running about 40 kilometers with a 25-kilogram backpack. Here's me, that's the map of the 5,500-mile trip I took across the United States before coming to China. Here's me after I did a 100-mile bike ride without any sunscreen. I learned the value of that afterwards. And then there's me sitting on top of the Great Wall. Now you might wonder why I'm so crazy, and it's probably a lot because of my crazy family here. But if you ask me, I would say that it's not about being crazy. But my mom and dad and my little sister taught me to just dream big. And see, I would say that if you ask me what my craziest dream was, it was thinking that I could one day play basketball at Duke University. If you don't know about Duke University, I would claim, and I think a lot of other people would say, it's the best college basketball program in the country, in the United States. They've won, that's their coach right there, and it's a picture of me with him when I was 16 years old, even though I look 12. I worked out 4 hours a day in the basketball gym during school, 6 hours a day in the summer. I was not going to have any excuse as to why I was not going to be able to play basketball at Duke University. When senior year came along, while I got into Duke academically, I was not given a basketball scholarship. So, instead I decided to pursue basketball at another university called the University of Delaware. And I decided I wanted to play there. They're on the same league as Duke. And I decided to pursue that dream of basketball. Now before I tell you if I was successful in playing basketball, I want to share a couple stories that I've learned since 5 years ago when I first got the opportunity to maybe play collegiate basketball. Now see, this journey that I had taught me the difference between success and significance, and why all of us should strive for the latter and not the former. The first lesson I learned is from a young man named Robert, sitting in his wheelchair there. I met Robert when I was at an orphanage in Xi'an. Now see, Robert, if you can't tell, doesn't have any legs and he has one arm. When I met Robert, he had the biggest smile, almost as big as Greer's. And he was so happy to see us and my classmates, and he asked me to pick him up, and we carried him. I carried him all around the orphanage. We were running around. You could tell that Robert was in charge. Everybody listened to Robert. And then I told Robert that we had brought him some candy. And so he said, all right, let's go back and we'll get some candy. And so I'm holding Robert on my hip, and there's a whole bag of candy, and I lean over. He grabs the whole bag instead of one piece. He said, Pablo, 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 Pablo. So we run away. And I thought, okay, Robert's supposed to run away and eat the candy. But no. Robert kept giving me directions to the front of the orphanage, where we met the gate guard. And the gate guard at the front had almost no teeth. His shirt was torn. He clearly lived in extreme poverty. And this little kid, Robert, with no parents, no money himself, no legs and one arm, takes the bag of candy and gives it to this man and says, "Here, thank you for what you do." And here was I thinking I was the American coming to help him. And no. He taught me more than I could ever teach him. He taught me that no matter what, we always have something to give somebody else. The second story I want to share is with this man, Jerry. And I met him when I was running across the United States the first time. Jerry was a Navy veteran. And Jerry also likes to do long-distance bike rides, like 100-mile bike rides. But Jerry doesn't have any legs. He uses a hand cycle. And he cycles the 100 miles with his hands. And when I met Jerry, I couldn't understand why this guy with no legs would try to cycle 100 miles. And he told me his story. See, Jerry lost his legs in an explosion in Afghanistan when he was deployed over there with his brothers and sisters. And he was the only one who survived the bombing. And when he came back home to the United States, he was extremely depressed. In fact, as he was telling me, one day he was wheeling home from the doctors and he had decided he was going to commit suicide. And he said that on that ride home, he met a random individual who happened to stop him at the intersection and asked him how he was doing. And Jerry just kind of wheeled along and ignored him. And the guy said, no, how are you doing? And Jerry said, why are you asking me this? And as Jerry is telling me this story, tears fall from his eyes onto his chair. And he says that because that one individual took enough time to have a conversation with him, he realized he had value in society again. Because that one individual, as Hannah started with, had empathy. Jerry had hope. Jerry taught me that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can always have empathy with a stranger and give them hope in me. And the last story I want to share is with a man named Enough. I met him the day after I took this picture, the day after I nosedived off that cliff in Zimbabwe. This is at Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. And I went to Zimbabwe to do research, but also to see the country where my mother grew up in. She was born and raised in Zimbabwe and came to the United States when she was 19. And on my last day in Zimbabwe, I decided I was going to go buy a couple gifts to bring back home to my mom. And on the way, at the market, I met a couple guys there who were selling things, and I wanted to buy a couple goods. I didn't have enough money, and so I said, you know what, I'll just come back tomorrow. And the guy said, okay, and so I started to leave, and he stopped me and he said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm coming back tomorrow. He said, okay, well, why don't you just take these things and you can come back tomorrow and pay. And it blew me away that this guy trusted me to pay him the next day, even though I took the items. And so I came back the next day and I met a couple other people. And the last person I interacted with, it was in the back of the market, and I realized he almost sold nothing. And I asked him, I said, how do you survive back here? He says, I just take every job that I can. And at that moment, another individual tapped me on the shoulder and he gave me this necklace. And he said, my name is Enough, and I'm giving you this necklace because I want you to know that no matter how healthy you are, how much money you don't have, how much time you feel you don't have, you always have enough. See, I tell you all this because none of these people were rich. None of them were celebrities. And by the world's terms, they were not successful. But they were significant. See, each of them took a section of their 24 hours of their day and invested it in somebody else's life, and that person happened to be me. Now, if you don't believe me about the impact of time, everybody do me a favor and shut your eyes. Close your eyes right now, and I want you to think about the one person in your life who has impacted you the most, who has been there when you failed and brought you up to when you succeed. I want you to think of their name, I want you to think of their face, and when you have that person, go ahead and open your eyes. I'm going to bet you $1 million that person's not rich, they ain't famous, they're not a celebrity, they're not a grand author, they're simply somebody who took a portion of the time they're given and invested it in your life. When I think of that person, I think of my mother. who worked 3 jobs along with my dad's 2 jobs in order to help us be able to eat and do the things that we wanted. She's not rich. She simply took the time and invested it in our life. And now if you don't think that you have time to invest in somebody else's life, think about the time you've already lived. Let's assume everybody in here is 22 years old about. Of those 22 years, you might have been walking for 21 of them, been in school for 15 of them, had a boyfriend or a girlfriend for maybe 6 of them. Some of us maybe 0. Maybe been independent for 3 of them, and maybe have graduated for 0 of them. And think about everything you've already accomplished. And now think of the 60 years you have remaining and how much more you can accomplish. See, that time that you want to spend is up to you. Now, let me go back to my original dream. I was crazy enough to think I could play college basketball for Duke, and guess what? I was not successful. I failed miserably. And then when I got to Delaware to try to play basketball, a week before my first practice, I broke my ankle. And I wasn't playing basketball either. See, the world would tell me that I was not successful. But I would argue that because of the journey that I had along the way pursuing my dream of playing basketball, I was given the opportunity to meet Jerry and Robert and enough to learn that significance is far more important than success. That often our dreams prepare us for something far greater. It's like a story my basketball coach told me in high school. He said a father told his son, "Hey, I want you to move this massive stone." And the son said, "Cool." So he's pushing it, he's shoving it, he's doing everything he can, he's pulling, he's sweating for a year, and that stone doesn't move at all. And finally the son turns to the father, he says, "What, Dad? It never moved." And the dad laughs. He said, "It was never meant to move." He said, "You had that dream, you had that passion because it prepared you for something far greater than you could have ever imagined." See, my dream to play college basketball gave me the opportunity and the idea to run across the country later, and that's when I realized that that dream of basketball prepared me for something far greater. And that significance came to fact when I was running across Arizona. It was 40 degrees Celsius outside. I ran 26 miles that day, and at the end we were meeting with a group. And after we talked to the group, this old man came up to me with tears in his eyes and he said, "Nobody has ever told my story about being a veteran like you have." And I was just a little kid with 2 legs, decided to run for somebody else. See, all of us are left with the decision every single day. We can either take the time that we're given for success, or you can give the time that we're given for significance. That's your choice. I named my talk the 5% because, based on the world's terms, if you base it off of money, fame, recognition, 5% of you will succeed and the rest will fail. But if you pursue significance and not success, if you pursue giving time to people, that doesn't require fame or money or recognition. It's simply giving that time to somebody else. And I want to close with this. Take out that phone and look at the picture that you took. If you were to ask people that you knew who impacted them the most, would they think of that face? Have you given your time for people to think of that face? Or are you the only person who would think of that face? Thank you.